Behind the Shades.
I am Lainne. I am an award-winning spiritual psychology coach. I am also an author. I am a leading edge healer, and I am a mama, my proudest title, mama. My newest book, which is really exciting because it's a collaboration between 12 authors, me being one of them. And it's just an amazing book, like that is filled with stories of triumph and transformation. And it's one of those, like, you can't put it down. And it's not overwhelming in that each person's story is a chapter. So some are short, some are more lengthy, and they all pull you in. And I'm super, super proud of it. It's called A Bigger Mission, and it was a bestseller on Amazon in a couple of different categories. So we feel pretty excited about that.
Perfect. So take me through this writing process. And I would love to get an insight because I always thought about writing a book myself. And then I felt a little arrogant in a way. I'm like, am I really going to tell my own story and expect other people to read it? But then I spoke to a few authors and they said, no, look at it as you're leaving your legacy out there in hopes of inspiring and encouraging others. So take us through why you started the book and the writing process of it.
Well, I love that you just said that because that's exactly how this book came to be. I was in an education program with the other authors. And as we're sharing things about ourselves, one of the things that I shared was that I was an author. And then most people say, oh, well, I have always wanted to write a book, which is amazing because so many people have wonderful, inspiring stories and they need to be shared. And that's how this came to be, where I just said, well, I've heard it from enough people that everybody's interested in writing their own book. Why don't I take you through the process? Because it only took me 15 years to learn it and to actually finally get it done. And it doesn't have to take you that long. So if we go through it together, then you'll learn what you need to learn and you'll gain the confidence to be able to say, I am an author, I am a published author, so that when you go on to write your own work, it's already done and you have that identity installed within you. So the process is actually pretty simple. Now we're so lucky in this age of technology to have all of the tools and resources available to us to make these dreams come true, to get yourself to be a published author. And there are so many awesome people out there that have great programs that will be able to lead you through the process and get you the results you're looking for, which is also really, really great. Now you don't have to buy like 10,000 copies of your book, you can print on demand, which is great, which is why I like using Amazon, and there are many other platforms as well. It was just a great place to start. So if you want to write a book, you just start like with anything else. You just sit down and you just vomit all over the page, whether it's your screen or pen to paper, whatever that is. And you can use, again, in this age of technology, so many different tools. You can speak it out and a program can type it out for you. You can type it out. You can write it out. You can sit with somebody and talk it out in terms of having somebody interview you. That's how I first started 15 years ago. I had actually hired 3 different people to ask me different questions because I knew I had all the information in my head. I just didn't know how to get it out. And so I noticed that if I was able to speak about it, then the answers surfaced. So those are different things that I did that I would highly recommend that other people can do. And in terms of your story is absolutely important. Every single person's story is important. You are a one of a kind wonder. There has never been, and there never will be another you. And nobody has had all of the life experiences that you've had, faced the challenges that you had, come out the other side like you have. Everybody has a story to share, wisdom to share, inspiration to share, people to lead. So, yes, if anyone and everyone, and yourself included, is interested in writing a book and sharing your story, please give us all the gift of doing that.
That's a beautiful answer. And guys, I did not pay her for that compliment about my story, but I value it. One thing I did growing up in my, well, not that old now, but I'm in my 30s now, but in my 20s, one thing that I did is I wrote a lot of poetry. Like I used to love poems, and it's like a short form story into your life. So some of the topics I would write about or write poems about was growing up without my mother or my father, trying to understand the world as a man, trying to grow into a potential partner and a potential husband as a man, as I was growing up. And I found it very therapeutic in a way, because what I was sharing on the paper, I necessarily at times couldn't share with people around me. And maybe that was a reflection on me because I wasn't surrounding myself with the right people. But I know when you decided to join us today, you mentioned something about breaking through patterns. And I think one of the patterns that I found myself in during that time was I was surrounding myself with the wrong people, thinking it was cool, thinking it was, oh, this person's exciting because of the chaos in their life, right? Like every day was like a Jerry Springer episode, or every day was like a train wreck waiting to happen. But like many times when you're on the highway, when you're on the road, you see an accident, you're always breaking your neck to look because it's interesting, right? Are they going to survive, or what's going on? Like it just piques your curiosity. So when you highlight breaking through patterns, what does that mean to you? And how can that in turn, what would that mean to our audience listening?
Well, breaking patterns, we all have patterns to break. We have intergenerational patterns, we have karmic patterns, ancestral patterns, societal, religious. There's so many different patterns, galactic, cosmic patterns. So it becomes really interesting work, and it becomes dynamic work that we get to do with ourselves and that I get to do in working with people. It's really important to break the patterns because that's exactly what it is. It's just a program. It's just something that's been passed down, and we get to examine whether or not that's something that's actually serving us and producing the results that we're looking to achieve or get or experience in our lives. And if we're not, then we can look at how it is that we're causing our life to happen. So how is it that I'm not getting the results that I want? And what are the actions or behaviors or way of thinking, way of being that I possess or am exhibiting that are causing the results that I'm having? And then it's so great that we can examine those things and then delete, release, whatever word is that you want to use, transform those patterns and then install new ones.
So would one pattern, since you mentioned like generational and religion, because I think those are probably two that are very dear to a lot of people's
Yeah.
hearts, right?
Yeah.
You always hear often generational trauma,
Yeah.
right? The grandfather who was an alcoholic, and then the father becomes one, and then the children of present day become one as well. Or if you hear about the mother who was very emotionally controlling, and then the daughter grows up to be as such as
Yeah.
well. What are some of the steps that we can at least identify that we are in a pattern ourselves from our parents, because there's probably times where people don't see it because it's hard to see the trees from the forest sometimes, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the first step. The first step is learning how to identify that. And you learn to do that by noticing. I always call it notice and name. So you notice what you notice. Okay, how am I reacting? How am I behaving? Like, say you become a parent And before you had kids, you were like really easygoing, really patient, like you're positive and kind all of the time. People would describe you as like just a wonderful, positive person. And then you have kids, and all of a sudden you turn into like a bitchy, impatient, grumpy, like these different aspects of your personality that you really haven't witnessed before are all of a sudden presenting themselves. So that's the trigger. So the trigger is becoming a parent. And that's what we need in order for us to get to see patterns, is we need something to trigger. And the cool thing is it's being triggered and it's being noticed for a reason, is so that we can release it. So we don't want to keep patterns, but they keep sticking and staying with us because we don't notice them and then do the work that needs to be done to release ourselves of them. So the pattern there in the example of, all of a sudden noticing like these new personality traits. So that could be a couple of different things. So that could be karmic. So that could be in relationship to a past life. They're real. Past lives, parallel lives, they're real and they influence our lives, and karma is a part of that. It could be familial. It could be a part of your lineage. And that gets passed down literally within our cells and also within our energetic fields and our structure. So it manifests in a couple of different ways. And that's just being passed down. Again, that could be a little bit more complicated, and it could involve karma and the ancestral line. So we picked that specific family because of our karma, and we that specific trait exists within the lineage, within the DNA, within the energetic structure and field of that family. But the good news is we can transform all of that stuff with the same step. So
What
you're
are
getting
some?
a 3-for-1 deal.
Yeah, it definitely looks like that, right? And who wants to
Yeah.
pass up a 3-for-1 deal? It's almost like too good to be true. And in a way, it's very interesting to find out that many of our behaviors can be traced back to a specific moment in time. And I know for a lot of people, it's probably scary to think that, well, you're going to have to, in some situations, you have to wait for a trigger to understand what it truly means. But I
Yes.
think we misunderstand the word trigger. So I'll give you an example. So sometimes we look at trigger as um, the person walking down the street is scared because a few years before I was mugged, and the exterior of this person reminds me of that situation, right? Versus a trigger could be that this behavior that this person who I love dearly is making me feel a certain type of way. Why is that? Let me understand that, right? Let me dig a little bit deeper. Is it, as you mentioned, is it something that maybe is from my past life, or it's passed down? Or is it from a memory that I kind of blocked from my childhood experience that maybe is bubbling up to the surface and I don't necessarily know what it means? Is it more of that
All of
situation that you're
those are
talking about?
correct. Yeah, that's also right. And interesting that you said mugged, because that's the story, and that's my chapter in the book, is the story of the time that I got mugged. And that's exactly it. Yeah, I would get triggered. Just the feeling of walking down the street and having somebody come up behind me, just walking past me, the feeling of that was really triggering for me, as my body, my energetic field registered their presence before I consciously could register the presence, and that was a trigger for me. So how we notice triggers is exactly that, feelings. So this is a great thing. We get to start being more familiar with our actual body and our system, because most of us are checked out. We're like, I don't know how this thing works. Where's the on button? Where's the off button? Like, I don't see the light. Do I need to change something? Like, this is our home. This is our vehicle. And yet we don't take the time at all to really understand it. And I know Abraham Hicks talks a lot about your emotions being your guidance system. And that's exactly what it is. Your emotions are just here to tell you, to give you a clue, to give you a sign, to say, ding, ding, ding. Here is the stimulus. Here's your opportunity to start examining something. Oh, I feel this. I feel tense. So you notice maybe like it's in your body. So in that example of the person coming up behind me on the street, so first I would feel it would be physical. That's what I could name first. Would be like all of a sudden I would feel alert and I would tense. So that's what I could notice, alert and tense and distracted. So if I like was in a conversation or kind of looking for something, all of a sudden it would be like this. And then I'd have to name what's the emotion. The emotion is terror, fear, worry. So he starts to be able to name the emotions that are pairing with the body sensation. And this is you starting to notice what your triggers are, what the signs and symbols that your body is using to be able to speak to you very, very clearly. And then, so then my job after that would be to let it go. Because what we do when we have a feeling is we say, oh, that's really uncomfortable. I do not want to feel that. Yuck. I'm going to dissociate. I'm going to distract myself. I'm going to push it down. I'm going to pretend it's not there, whatever these different coping mechanisms that we have. I'm going to get drunk, whatever that is. I'm going to eat it away. So there are, countless ways in which we do that. We distract ourselves or in which we just don't actually deal with the emotion. So if you can just go in there and feel the emotion, then that releases the emotion that needs to be released. And then you will find that you either don't have a trigger anymore or that it's diminished.
What are maybe some of the roadblocks that are common in the clients that you deal with that is preventing them from letting go of specific situations?
One, they don't do the work because it's scary. It's scary to do the work, right? It's uncomfortable. I don't know if it's scary because you've already lived through all of these incidents. It's already all happened to you. You've lived through it. So it's actually not scary. You're just remembering something that's happened to you, or not even remembering it, reviewing it, or even you don't even have to actually remember what happened. You just have to let go of the emotion. Because some things might feel too painful, and our system might not be able to process it all because we can kind of short circuit. It can be an overload. So in those cases, I like to just go in and feel the emotion and not necessarily go back to what the incident is because it's not necessary. You can just let it go. And you just feel the feeling and you let it go. And you can let it go in little bits, but that's the only reason why you can't and won't get anywhere is that you're avoiding / not doing the work.
So if I understand correctly, if I look at some of the situations I've been in that are negative, I could resolve it by not reliving the situation or re-experiencing it, but I can revisit what I felt during that situation to understand it better. Is that what it means?
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to understand it. Sometimes that helps. Every person is different and every situation is going to be different. Sometimes it's part of the lesson because, even in myself, I've had almost every experience, what would be an uncomfortable experience. I've experienced a lot of different violence and things in my life, a lot of different pains and hurts, and I created all of those things. Why did I create them? And how did I create them? Those things are part of the experience. So when we're going to transform an experience, sometimes it's necessary to remember what it is because we get to integrate what the lesson is there. And sometimes we don't need to. We just need to release the karma. It's a very complex system, what we have here in being humans, and we're really just not educated or shown like the beautiful complexity of like what it means to be here and to be a soul and to be a spirit and to be a human, and what the gifts and possibilities are there.
Would there ever be a point where we truly understand ourselves and how we can better navigate amongst each other in this world on that type of level you just described?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, we're shifting into the golden age of miracles right now. And I think that everybody can kind of feel that collective shift of energies, and it's always, darkest before the dawn, as the saying goes. But we can see that there's a lot of chaos and turmoil, but people's perspective towards things and the way that they're seeing things are starting to shift. I know definitely that has happened within me in different ways, that it's happening with, somebody else. We're all experiencing it in our own way as we're meant to, because, going back to how we started, we're all unique wonders and we're all individual aspects of the one of we are all one love, one heart, one song, different music,
What are
different tones.
Yes, it's like there was I forget where I saw this. I think it was a movie where we all have the rhythm inside us because our heart beats to one, and each rhythm is unique to each other. And it made me think about some of the struggles that I went through and how I was able to resolve it. And you mentioned earlier that not doing the work and perhaps sometimes it could be scary. I know some of the changes that I foresaw that I needed to make were scary. And it was scary on the level where I wasn't prepared to do so. I wanted to, but I didn't necessarily have the resources or I didn't have the strength to do it because it was something, if I look at it, it was 5 steps ahead and I needed to do steps 2 and 3 to get to that fifth step. But I can see it, I can visualize it, I can reach out and almost touch it, but I knew that that's all that I could do. And that was scary to me because I started to think, what if I'm not good enough to make it to the end that I visualize for myself? That was my journey and that was my understanding. You mentioned some of the things high level that you went through. What are some of the changes or what are some of the situations that you went through where you had to possibly let go and do the work so you could become the woman that you are in front of me today?
Yeah, I love that. I love those insights that you just shared because, yes, that is part of the journey. And I guess that is the part that does feel scary, is all of the changes that take place and all the things that fall away as that happens, all the things you have to let go of, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, all the identities, the people, the ways of being. Like, that's comfort, right? We're, as humans, part of being a human is we really love being comfortable. I know I do, right? And as soon as that starts to change, it becomes new, it becomes unknown, and it's different. It's not resonating the same, but there's always, for me, there was just always that inner voice, even though I was really discomfort and uncomfortable and in pain. And I cursed a lot of the journey. Um, and it hasn't been an easy journey, and it's been a long journey. I've been on this journey for, I don't know, over 20 years for sure. Um, Actively, like, really pursuing and studying and taking action steps and taking risks and doing hard things. And it definitely hasn't been a seamless thing. And as I say that, it doesn't have to be that for you. Like, anybody out there, it doesn't have to take you 20 years. It could take you a day, a week, a month, like anything is possible, and change is possible in an instant. It really, really is. So just want to put that out there as everything is possible, and just keep doing the work and keep showing up and keep having the hope in your heart. And yeah, sometimes I was like you. I had a lot of steps. I had a lot of steps, and just when I thought that I did certain steps, I thought, well, then I've got to be here now. And then I'd get knocked down again. I've spent a lot of time on my knees, getting back up. Um, and now it's always hindsight, right? Like looking back, I can see why and what I gained from that. Because I'm sure every single person listening has a story like that in their life where they thought it was the shittiest, most horrible thing. And when they were in it and when they got to the other side of that, they could see what it birthed within them or what it gave to them or who they became because of it. And that's a really, really cool thing. So yeah, what have I been through? I mean, like most of us, I grew up in a really chaotic, unstable home. My mom was a teenage mom, single mom, um, 4 kids, not a lot of money. I mean, that's in many ways more of my mom's story and my mom's struggle than mine. Children don't suffer the same sort of challenges that parents do when they're dealing with those kind of economic struggles. But I definitely experienced physical, emotional, sexual abuse, and then growing up, choosing not the best partners sometimes. So I've had some really good ones, and I've had some really terrifying experiences with mentally unstable partners. I've been through the gamut, and then being mugged. That was that was an interesting experience too, and what came out of it was something that I didn't expect. I didn't expect to feel sad for the person. To the predominant feeling upon like peeling myself up off the ground after that experience was sadness for how sad and how desperate and how what a place you have to be in yourself and your heart to inflict that much violence on just a random stranger. And that surprised me in kind of a beautiful way.
I had a
And
similar
opened up like different
experience.
lines of questioning.
Yeah, I had a
Sorry.
yeah, no, don't. I love that you're sharing that because I had a similar experience. I haven't been mugged myself, but I've seen people go through hard times, and I've heard stories similar to yourself where there's people that they've committed acts that they themselves are surprised that they're willing to compromise themselves in that way to do it. And
Mhm.
I don't know this person that did this to you, and many times we think, oh, that person's evil and things like that, but think about it like this, and this is for me when I see things on TV or in the news or wherever, is what had to happen to that person
Hmm.
who looks like an everyday person, looks like me, looks like you, looks like so many countless other people, right? That they're willing to inflict, as you mentioned, that kind of trauma onto someone. You look at the numbers, and most of the crimes are done by someone you know. When it's someone random like that, it's usually out of desperation.
Yeah.
Something is happening. And you touched on a point where when you mentioned your upbringing, some of the things that you've gone through, I've always wondered when someone shares a story like that and the beginnings of their life is chaotic, right?
Mhm.
It's not stable in a sense. And then they get out there into the world as adults, maybe, and they find themselves in chaos when it comes to their relationships or their interpersonal relationships, such as dating or maybe at work and things along those lines. I always wonder, and maybe you can answer this, what goes through that person's mind? Because they must be looking at it as, I've had trouble here, I've had trouble there, I've had trouble all around me. When am I going to reach a point where the waters are nice and calm and I can be at peace? Did you ever have that type of conversation where you're thinking, when will all of this end for me and I can start living my life the way I want it to be, including
Yeah,
peace?
all the time. I don't think I got to peace until recently. Actually, it was just like the why, yeah, why me? A little bit. It's a victim mentality, really. It is like, why me? Why does this happen to me? Um, why am I always experiencing these things? It is a victim mentality, and it's really important to recognize that, because that again goes, that's a part of the pattern. So the unfortunate thing, if we're talking like law of attraction, the different laws of the universe, but that's what you attract to you if that's what's in your pattern, right? And that's if that's what you keep noticing, like if somebody says, like, count how many red cars you see today, then that's what you're looking for, even like subconsciously. So when you grow up in chaos, at least I can only speak to my experience, but that's the only energy. So not only like consciously and subconsciously am I being imprinted and experiencing that, it also becomes a part of my energetic field. So how it is that I'm vibrating and what it is that I'm magnetizing towards myself. So although consciously I did not want to be reliving the experience of my childhood. I wanted something different. I wanted something better. My energetic field and my subconscious programming was drawing towards me, these experiences that I didn't want to have. And that's why it's so important to work on those things if you're wanting to create change in your life, because that's where that sense of frustration comes, or that sense of, oh, I want this. Why isn't it happening? And that's why. And that's why, because our conscious choices aren't as powerful and they're not running the show. Our subconscious programming is running the show. Our karma is running the show. Our ancestral patterns are running the show, and the vibration that's in our field is also running the show. So that's how you start to actually create change in your life. You do need the conscious choice. You need to consciously decide things as a free and sovereign being. And as a conscious creator, you need to choose what it is that you want and hold that in your mind's eye. That's the conscious part. And it is important, but it's not enough. That's why, affirmations and things don't work, because it's really just, it's conscious programming. I mean, if you say it enough times, it can become, I guess it could become a part of a pattern for sure, um, but that it's often not enough.
Is it possible for one pattern to present itself in one situation, and then when left unchecked, it can manifest itself in another situation? Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, essentially how we do it. Anything is how we do everything. But yeah, sometimes it can be hard to see the pattern because we're not recognizing necessarily what the trigger is, because it the scenario, the outward scenario can look different. Like maybe I'm in a blue room one day and I'm in a green room the next day, and what I'm recognizing is the color. I'm not seeing that, oh, it was the pattern on the floor that was the same, because I'm only looking up at the walls, and the predominant difference that I can see is the color, the green and the blue, but really it was something that I wasn't really looking at. It was the pattern on the floor. That was the trigger. And so that's why that practice of noticing, just notice. How am I showing up? How am I feeling? What's happening in my body? What are the emotions? Can I name the emotions? And you start to be able to notice what your patterns are.
So I wonder how much of that is that it goes back to that saying where we see what we want to see. So, for example,
Mhm.
if I'm watching, let's say I'm watching a movie and the person is very abusive in the movie,
Mhm.
right? And that movie resonates with me for some reason that I've yet to understand or discover.
Mhm.
Then subconsciously, I can take it back the next day and I can start seeing abuse in certain things that maybe I didn't see it, therefore creating a pattern, right? But
No,
that
that's a
was
good thing. That's the
that's a
trigger.
good thing. That's the
That's a
trigger
good
was the
thing. That's
abuse.
the trigger.
Okay,
So then if you start to see it, if it keeps coming up, it's because it wants to be cleared.
I see. I see. So
So
that is
consciously you didn't
something. No, go
remember
ahead.
being abused.
Mhm.
Yeah, consciously you didn't remember being abused. I mean, probably all of us, if we see abuse, we're triggered, and because that's goes against um so many of our conscious ways of being, our emotions, like all of these things. But um by feeling the feeling that came up when you saw the abuse and never having consciously associated the abuse, if it keeps coming up, that's because it needs to be cleared, because exactly that. It's tagged something, whether it's in your ancestral lineage or due to your karmic work or a past parallel life. It's tagged something. So then that's saying, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. You've noticed it. So that means it's ready. It can be cleared now. So wouldn't have to go back. You could, if you're interested, if you're like, I'm interested in remembering what this abuse could be. Because sometimes it is interesting. Sometimes it's interesting to go back to, like, I don't know what time it was, but like I'm a little boy and I'm wearing like white linen and there's sand around me. Like, that can be an interesting thing because I'm so far removed from that life. It becomes now an interesting story to me. So sometimes you can choose to do that. And sometimes you can just go into the abuse and be like, okay, I'm noticing that something's coming up around abuse. Oh, where do I feel that? Where do I feel that in my body? Oh, I'm noticing, like, I feel like tense in my throat. Okay. So you bring just awareness to that. Do I feel an emotion that goes with that? Do I feel more of a physical sensation? And then you can start to clear those things.
Because I asked that because there's times where I'm watching a movie and it always seems to be around the same theme where someone who was counted out in life. Maybe people around them thought they were less than, but they were able to rise to the occasion and save others.
Mm.
Sometimes they would save others and they didn't have to sacrifice themselves in a way, but they would save others after being viewed as less than. And anytime I've seen like a scene like that in a movie, it's always made me feel sad at a moment that is pretty good because you have someone who's helping others out. And I've always wondered if that's somehow a part of either my early childhood that maybe I just can't remember, or maybe it's part of something deeper in my life because I couldn't ever, even to this day, I can't pinpoint why I feel what I feel when I see those types of scenes.
I would say absolutely. Definitely. So there's something in that for you, whether or not it's this life or a part of your lineage or from a past parallel life. There's something there for you.
So it seems like there's homework I have to do.
There's some homework for you to do. Yeah, absolutely.
How would I come to terms with understanding it at that point?
So, at that point, you would do that exercise. So the next time you feel the trigger, or even if you've seen it enough that you've noticed it now, you've already done one of the steps. So you're conscious of it. That's a step, becoming conscious of what it is that's happening and then examining it. and being curious about how it relates to you or could it relate to you. So those are steps too. And then you would just sit with it. Just sit with those questions, sit in that like curiosity and notice what happens. So then you would start to notice, okay, what do I notice in my body? When I think that, when I feel that, when I recognize that, what do I notice? Okay, where do I notice that in my body? Okay, what are the feelings that come with that? Can I name them? So I'd write those down.
'Cause I have
Um,
them. There's times where I would actually start crying and I
Good,
have
great.
no idea, right? And I have no idea why. So it's mostly in my face and my thoughts. And when I'm going through it, I'm trying to figure out what it is. And then I feel stronger emotion, stronger emotion. And it's to the point where at sometimes I just have to say, okay, I need to park this because I just don't understand the source of it at all.
And you don't need to understand the source, but you can, again, if it feels like it's interesting to you and you're curious about it, but I wouldn't get stuck on it because that could be a reason why we don't transform something. Because that becomes like that little bit of that edge where um although the parts of us that are ready to transform come up when they're ready to be cleared, they also don't want to be cleared because there's parts of us that are, no, this is part of my identity. I'm going to resist the change. I don't want to let go. So that it's riding that edge of knowing when it's time to let something go and that it is time to let something go and being able and willing to let it go. And that can be that little bit of that scary feeling. And that's often when we stop, when we're just about to let go. So as you're crying and releasing and letting it go, and then you're like, I gotta, no, I gotta stop because you almost let it go.
And Lainey, as we close, what's some advice you want to give to those listening who are trying to who not necessarily trying to understand, but who want to move forward and let it go, as you mentioned?
Yeah, just trust yourself and trust the process. And know, as we said earlier, that you already lived through it. You've already done the hardest part, experiencing the experience, living through it. You already did that. You already did that. So you're safe. You are safe. You can do it. It's all going to be okay. It's just allowing yourself the space to experience something new and to free yourself and to allow yourself to be lighter. It requires a lot of change, and uh, we resist change. We are people. We resist change. We resist being uncomfortable. And all those things are necessary. So also, like find people that inspire you. Like I love David Goggins. I think he's so awesome. Don't ever want to do the things that he does. I'm not interested in challenging myself the way that he does. And what he's talking about and what he's doing is not lost on me. Although I don't want to run ultra marathons or push my body the way that he pushes it, I see the gift in what it is that he's sharing is that you're capable of more. Your body is capable of more. Your mind is capable of more. There's so much more inside of you. And stop making excuses. Stop like not taking action. Stop not doing it because nobody else is doing it. Stop saying I'm tired or I'm hurt or I'm sick. Like those, we make so many excuses and we put so many obstacles in our way that keep us from getting what it is that we want. And in the end, that's actually more painful. It's way more painful to live your life and never have reached for the dreams that you wanted to reach for rather than the pain and discomfort of like feeling uncomfortable on a feeling or emotion or getting up a little bit earlier or lifting a heavier weight or whatever that that feeling of discomfort that you're trying to avoid now, it's never going to be as uncomfortable as regret. And that's ultimately what kind of was the last thing that pulled or pushed me forward, was gosh, regret is going to be way heavier, way more uncomfortable than trying, than doing, than getting back up again. So find somebody that inspires you. Listen to them on repeat, on a loop every day, until you can get to the point where you can motivate yourself. And on the days and moments that you can't, listen to them, listen to somebody. Fill your mind, fill your thoughts with thoughts that aren't yours so that you can start to break your habit, break your cycle. I would listen to like hours and hours of books. I still do because I just really love books and I love learning, but often I would just put that on so it wasn't my inner voice that I was hearing. So I could be expanding, I could be learning, I could be replacing my thoughts with something positive. So also do that. And those are really, really good, easy steps that you can do that don't cost a lot of money, that don't actually take a lot of time. It's just creating a new habit. And then find people to work with. I mean, I couldn't have done what I have done without working with somebody, and I'm always working with somebody. I have like 3 different therapists. I have a coach. I'm in school. I am always learning and growing and expanding and reaching for more. So I invite you to do the same, reach for more, get some help. Thank goodness there's podcasts like this one where you have somebody that is really insightful and expanding and offering you really cool and helpful information. So do that as well. And then start to learn your body, start to learn yourself, start to make yourself important. Oh my goodness, we don't even put ourselves on the list of what's important. You're number one and you are number one. So treat yourself like you're number one, especially if you're expecting other people to. And those are my best places for you to start.